My name is Max Tim. I created a whole bunch of educational material for the International Screenwriters Association. Obviously, I'm hosting this in association with them. And I'm a story consultant, and I run my own consulting company called The Story Farm, where I work one-on-one with writers. I host retreats. I just finished a live retreat in the Lake Geneva area with 8 writers this past week. It was awesome. We had such a great weekend. It was so creative, and we had a ton of fun. I had a couple nights where I may have had a little more to drink than I should have, but it was fun. It was really great. I love seeing where everyone is from. We have Mumbai, Cleveland, Serbia, Portugal, Vancouver, Canada, a couple from, two people from, same person, 2 listings. Tucson, Arizona. It's good to see everybody here. Let me know where you're viewing this. I'm curious if you can post a little comment. I'm watching this on Instagram or something. It's the first time we've broadcast to multiple channels. So if it's a little wonky, I apologize. We're still kind of getting this, figured out. Jess from Victoria, welcome. I am in Wisconsin, tiny town, Wisconsin. I lived in LA for about 20 years. Came back during the pandemic, and I'm still here. I go back to LA maybe 3 or 4 months out of the year. But welcome, everybody. Hey, Max and everyone. I'm in Clearwater. Great. Brett is watching from YouTube. Excellent. Darshan is also on YouTube. Yeah, I would assume most of our viewers are going to be on YouTube, but we'll see how this goes. This is going to be fun. What we're talking about today, the title of the event is Seen and Heard, and just kind of discussing some of the elements of, missing piece in your process, where missing pieces. It's a little broad in terms of the topic, but I have specific things that I want to cover that, in a way, it's just me being honest and straightforward with all of you. Not to be, pessimistic by any means. I just don't know if enough people in the industry are as honest and straightforward as they sometimes should be. In no way am I saying they're lying, but I just want to kind of, pull back the curtain on a few little topics, but also make this a Q&A. I want you to feel free to ask me anything other than like dating advice or something, because I won't be able to help you. Hopefully you don't need that help. But I see more people saying Portland, Oregon, very peaceful. My sister and her family live in Portland, and it's wonderful and beautiful, and I love Portland. Please don't believe what we are reading in the news. I will leave it at that. Kevin from Iowa, Talon from Toronto, good to see you. But anyway, so Seen and Heard, what I want to cover here are a few things. And I'm just going to go straight through what we listed in the event itself in terms of the topics. I'm just going to hit the topics exactly. But even beyond that, again, if you have questions of any kind about film festivals, screenplay contests, how do I get an agent, which I get that question all the time. What contests are the good ones that I submit to? How many scripts should I have in order to get a manager? Whatever question you have, feel free to ask. Please don't be shy. That's why we're doing this. This type of setup that we have here is going to be very similar to what I'm going to be hosting and doing with the 30-day screenwriting challenge, which starts on October 1st, just a couple days. If you're curious about that, Scott, if you could, I should have prompted you for this, but Scott will share a link. But you could go to the networkisa.org at the very least and find our circle community. And that's where we can find, Scott just put the link into YouTube there. And you can find it. It's a really easy, short link to remember. But nonetheless, that's part of our community, and that's where you'll find the class. If you want to join us, I'm going to be on office hours just like this every day. I'm going to talk to and about a topic that is in the coursework that everyone will be taking. And then questions, any questions that they have coming at me. But today, I first want to talk about one little topic here, a question of why do most writers stall at page 30? Now, some of you may be thinking, I don't stall at page 30. And good. I'm saying most, at least in terms of what I've noticed, as far as all the writers I've worked with for the past 20 years, one-on-one and, in classroom settings, on panels, and, a lot of the same questions, but also a lot of the screenplays that I've read. It's difficult to get through the first act, and we're talking about a feature in a lot of ways, and into and through the second act. A lot of times we find ourselves hitting that 30 to 40 page mark. We kind of lose steam, or we lose a little confidence, or we don't really know what's going to happen next. So we kind of put it down. We wait a little bit. Suddenly it's 6 weeks later. We haven't written anything. I'm pretty sure that I am not the only writer that has experienced that. So the quick answer to that question of why do most writers stall at that page 30 to 40 mark is that they really haven't done enough concept and character development work prior to getting to the outline, or much less the pages. We, as writers, we love the writing process, the actual interior coffee shop day, the scene direction, and then hitting the dialogue, and that makes us feel like a screenwriter. So of course we want to move into pages, and we want to have that experience because it's fun. It feels like that's the artistic part of what we do. But there's so much more pre-work, development work that we need to be doing a lot more of. I'm sure all of you do some brainstorming and you do some light outlining or something, but I would argue that you should be doing more of it. And that's a lot of what we cover in the 30-day challenge when I'm working with writers. But this also means that you haven't outlined the sequences or the scenes enough, nor have you allowed yourself to see the full picture from a character arc standpoint. So that technically means that we haven't established what the recurring moment or the hook of the story, or what that is yet. We haven't really spent the time in conceptual development to be able to see what are we trying to do from a really basic level here. So this means that we haven't spent enough time figuring out the specifics of type of character in a type of situation. I spent a lot of time over the retreat this last weekend talking about that, really digging into who your character is. What's the difference between what they think they want versus what they actually need, understanding from a broad scope what their arc is going to be, who are they going to be at the end of the movie versus and compared to who they are at the beginning. That this helps you see more of a bird's eye view, because more often than not, I have read log lines and or scripts, or have worked with writers where they have what they think is a fully developed concept, but really what they just have is a setup. But the setup hasn't then been executed. They don't necessarily continue along with the development of, here's what's going to happen in the second act of my movie. So, we have to be, and you've heard this all before, character drives plot. It's true because everything revolves around the character either being forced into a situation in order to pursue and achieve something, or they actively choose to pursue something in order to achieve something. It's virtually every story you've ever read or experienced. They're forced into it, and now they have to experience the situation, but there is a plot goal that they have to achieve. Or they're actively pursuing this, still with the plot goal to be achieved. There are inherent stakes, both emotional and plot, perspective and plot centric. But regardless, a finite goal is necessary. But the story needs an emotional structure, which means the writer needs to know what the emotional goal is. And the tricky part is the character won't necessarily be thinking this way. They think, and just because we've all seen National Treasure, I'm not saying this is the greatest movie ever made, but Nicolas Cage's goal is to prove that his family is right, highly summarizing, to clear his family name. That's an emotional goal for him. But deep down, from a writer standpoint, there's a lot more to it than that. He's a very, know-it-all type of character. He loves and has to be right all the time. He is so overly determined and so set within his belief system that it's nearly impossible to be thinking any other way. The process of that story then shows him, yes, discovering clues, following these clues, finding another one that leads them to there. I mean, this is a pretty easy little step-by-step breakdown that you could do. But all through the process of this, he's learning even just a tiny bit. It's not like he goes through this massive arc, but he's learning things about himself because of the love interest, because of his relationship with his father, and even his friend, kind of the nerdy friend, which of course I can't remember his name. But there are emotional steps that he's moving through. And even in a movie like National Treasure, which it doesn't seem like this is much of a character drama. It really isn't. It's for the fun of things. It's for the spectacle. But there's still character arcing, even in like a Back to the Future. We see the emotional progression that this character is going through. So in my little notes here, I'm mentioning the idea of moments being able to be brainstormed because of flaw confrontation. So basically, all I'm talking about here is that we haven't done this type of work prior to trying to get into the pages. It's why we stall out on page 30 or 40, because for basic reasons, you don't know what happens next. But sometimes it's okay to just throw out a draft. I hate the term vomit draft because every draft is worthwhile. But sometimes you can just sit down for, a weekend, you do nothing, but you just crank out a script. You get 110 pages and it's like, okay, I have something here. And sometimes you can just make it up as you go. But if you haven't done the pre-development work of figuring out, who this type of character is, what their belief systems are, what they wish for, desire, what are their flaws, what kind of false identity are they wearing, and who are they going to turn into by the end, then you can't really brainstorm the types of moments that character will experience in order to draw out that flaw and change it in a way. And I'm purposely saying to change the flaw, to allow them, as Michael Haig, longtime consultant, says, to allow them to kind of move away from their false identity, this false belief system that they may not even know it's false. They're not actually being who they truly can be, into their essence, as Michael says. We need to know what those moments might be. So it's flaw confrontation. So if you look at Finding Nemo, which I'm assuming you've all watched, and if you haven't, I'm jealous because I would love to watch that movie for the first time. But a really simple goal, it's literally the title. They have to find Nemo. But what isn't so simple is the dynamic between Marlin and Dory. That relationship is technically what drives the story, alongside Marlin's, extreme flaws of being risk averse and overprotective. So what does that then mean? You can brainstorm situations to place Marlin in that will draw out that flaw while he pursues the larger and main plot goal. And in your pre-development work, the outlining or even just list making, you really don't have to worry about structure all that much. You can just, here's my character's flaw. Here are situations that will draw that flaw out. Here's how this character is going to react if I place them in this type of situation. If they have to wait in line to the DMV, or, a lot of you have probably heard me give this little lecture before. But we have to do that work. We have to be thinking along those lines to be able to see the potential for moments, because every story lives in moments from scene to scene, and then there are moments within each scene. So yes, the main plot goal is important, and it's presented within the setup, or as some of you call the inciting incident. I have an argument against the terminology there, but it doesn't matter. It's set up there. Here are the stakes. Here's the character they're going to go, along the journey with. Here's the reason they have to do this from a basic, foundational level. All these things need to be considered and worked through. And so, I take a top-down approach from the development in terms of the development process: concept, then character development, then structure, and then the page work. Too often we do light concept brainstorming. I think I have this kind of basic idea with this world, and I think I know who the character is, and then we go right to the pages, and we've skipped so many important parts. So don't be too impatient. There's nothing, I shouldn't say there isn't anything writing on this, but no one's waiting necessarily for you to write this screenplay. Hopefully someday you get to a point where someone is, you've got a deadline of a week and they're going to give you 50 grand because it needs a huge rewrite, and hopefully you get to that place. But you have to be able to do all of these things on your own from a spec standpoint, meaning speculative meaning I'm going to write the screenplay in hopes to sell it or set it up or use it as a writing sample. Anyway, I'm going off on a little bit of a tangent there. So I just wanted to cover that first and foremost. Why do most writers stall at page 30 to 40? I just want to see if there are any comments or questions here. Muggs, hello. Muggs is saying, asking yourself, what does my character want and what does my character need can be so general. Do you have some specific questions to use as a jumping off point to understand the goals? So it's looking at the character from, and a lot of this is in the coursework that I have and that everyone would get in the 30-day challenge. But so I'll just list a bunch of them. What do they desire? What do they want but can't have, and why can't they have it? What do they believe about the world? What do they believe about themselves? What do they believe about the relationships in their lives? And then, of course, all of the deeper thing, like the psychological elements of what are their flaws. And not every flaw has to be wholly negative. It's not like it's a terrible thing. Like even Sally and When Harry Met Sally, she was just very vulnerable and open-hearted, and she wore her heart on her sleeve, and she trusted people a little too much, and all those things. Those are technically flaws if you take them to the extreme. So even though it may not seem like these are directly connected to the goal, if we look at Steve Carell in 40-Year-Old Virgin, his belief system was that he was just an incredibly kind person. He was very non-confrontational. He wanted everybody to be happy. He was very insecure, self-conscious about the fact that the movie's titled 40-Year-Old Virgin. And he really truly believed that this was a big deal, that he really is worried about the fact that he has never had sex. And so then we place all of those things about him within the presentation of the goal of go on a bunch of dates. That's a really simplified approach, looking at that. But just about every movie has some semblance of that. We spend time with the character before the plot. And then when the plot is presented, we now can connect the dots between all these things that we know about this particular character to the level of how important this goal is to the main character and to others, because every story is different. There might be some kind of, world-ending apocalypse type of goal, or it's just, I want to find a girlfriend, So just to go back to Mug's question, what does my character want? What does my character need? The character doesn't, like Steve Carell didn't realize he needed to just be okay with who he was. And so we saw a lot of ways where he was incredibly self-conscious prior to the actual, process of going out on all these dates. And so what is he learning? He's learning that all of these things these other people are trying to make me do, or the person they're trying to make me be, isn't me. I don't want to be that. And so that's the process of realizing what he actually needs. And so it's just this, boulder going down the hillside of just seeing him fail over and over again. And it's funny and it's kind of touching to watch all of that. Do you have some specific questions to use as jumping off point to understand the goals? So it may seem like those questions are just character sketch elements, but generally speaking, you can come up with a goal. Like, if I have this type of character and I place him or her within a plot situation, because there are some level of stakes. They have to find the treasure, or they have to escape New York. There's like 4 or 5 basic plot structures for every story: escape, convince, learn, defeat, navigate a new world, which is relatively loose. And there's another one that I'm forgetting, find justice or something. Like there really only ever 4 or 5 basic plot goals in any story. You can combine some of them. And so you want to be able to define, okay, what's my story going to be if I have a particular person who is, like a self-conscious, etc. Then if I place them within an escape type of situation, that type of character is going to react within a particular, in a particular way within this basic plot structure. Hopefully that helps, Muggs. Diane has a question. We'll get to that a little bit later. I'll go to the next point here that we want to talk about. So there was one little reference in the event here saying why writing alone guarantees failure. So I don't like using the word guarantee in this industry, because there are quite literally no guarantees. Because miracles do happen. You could technically just write by yourself forever, and someone might stumble into your life and go, hey, that's cool, what are you writing? And suddenly you're off and running. But we cannot rely on miracles, everybody. That's not a business model, So it's a pretty simple one. If you refuse to, either submit your material to the industry, contests, fellowships, festivals, industry execs, cold queries, whatever, then you'll never get anything made. It's that simple. It's like if you write The Great Gatsby and never allow anyone to read it, well, then you're just writing it for yourself, and maybe that's okay. I mean, it's fine to have this as a hobby and you just enjoy doing it. But I'm pretty sure most of us actually want to get something on screen. So writing alone and never sharing your work it's going to guarantee the fact that your projects are just never going to get made. So that's pretty easy. No one's going to knock on your door waiting for you to write something, because no one actually cares until they do. And that's the hard part. But I hate to break it to you in this way, but the industry runs on a really basic idea that most of you will probably be angered to hear, but how much money can you make me? It's just the truth. Like, that's not me trying to, be harsh. It's not me being pessimistic or negative. That's just the business, but beyond that, humans learn through relationships. So if you just look at your daily life, if we completely sequestered ourselves from other people, how much would we really learn about the world around us? Very little, at least in terms of growth. If we lived in the woods for 25 years, we're going to learn a lot about the woods. But are we really going to expand in terms of who we are and our capability and just the feeling of connection? I mean, I'm not saying it's impossible to not learn something by living in the woods for 20 to 30 years, because, I'm sure you're probably going to get pretty spiritual, blah, blah, blah. But we need other people. The whole idea of this life is to relate and to have, some amount of empathy and understanding. And as artists, it's that much more important. So, very little would happen, at least in terms of true expansion, So we have to cultivate relationships. We have to network. You have to work within writing groups. You have to take classes. It's all about learning and growing and making mistakes, supporting others, putting yourself out there. Because this game of screenwriting, it's not only about writing. It's about relationships, and you have to cultivate those relationships yourself. We can't rely on other people to do it for us. You are your own CEO. You're your own business manager. Julie is saying she loves that no one actually cares. I feel bad saying that, because of course we care. It's not like we're evil people that are just like, I hope you whatever, disappear. It's not that. It's just you have to show the industry why you're worth it, why you're worthwhile. You have to prove to them, here's why and how I'm going to make you money. And I hate to bring it down to that level, because there are ways that you can share your artwork and that you can, change minds. And I mean, even just with my young adult fantasy novel that I wrote a few years back, I'm still trying to finish the series. I didn't make really any money off of that, but I loved sharing the book, and I had a lot of people read it, and it's just difficult to make money in the publishing industry. A lot of people were affected by it. And so that, even if you change one person's mind or affect someone in some way, it's still worthwhile. So nonetheless, you can't write in a vacuum. One of my old screenwriting mentors would say that all the time. And it always annoyed the hell out of me, because like, can you explain yourself? Like, what are you talking about? But what he means is that we have to be active. We have to get out there. I don't care if you live in the middle of Kansas or if you live in, the tundra somewhere. Like, you have to leave sometimes, or you have to join, these Zoom meetings, or you have to try to find a writing group, and like, you're all a part of the ISA in some way. So you're doing that, so I'm not coming down on all of you watching this. But it's necessary, and that kind of goes into the next little topic of, why do successful screenwriters, succeed, and what do they do differently? And I'll hit that in a second, but let me just see if there are any comments here. Let's see here. Good question from Bill, but I'll get that at the end. Jennifer, self-motivation problem. This could be good. Do you have any solid tips on how to motivate yourself daily to build a solid writing routine, especially when no one is expecting the script? Really good question, Jennifer, because it is hard when you're writing something and you're like, well, what do I do when I'm done? We all experience that. It's like, okay, I finished a screenplay. What do I do now? There are a lot of things that we can do, and that's not necessarily what we're going to talk about. But that question is a nice segue into this idea of, what do successful screenwriters do differently? All of what I was just talking about in terms of, not writing alone. And I don't mean you need a writing partner. But plus, in terms of successful screenwriters, and this isn't going to directly answer your question immediately, Jennifer, but I'll get there in a second. This is going to sound oversimplified, but successful screenwriters are 100% committed to this. Top priority. In my notes, I'm saying there's no other priority. That's not, of That's not true necessarily. There are life responsibilities, being a parent, caring for a family member, health sometimes gets in the way, but these aren't more important than the writing. It's equally important. This is their job. It's what they do. And it's not because they have to do it, but because they need to do it. Like there's a driving force within them, but they weren't born with it. They cultivated that. They chose to do this. And to kind of go into a little bit of an answer for Jennifer, every day they choose that commitment all over again. It's just like being in a relationship or being in a marriage. You're choosing every day that this is the person I'm supposed to be with, because you could choose to not be with that person anymore. You have a choice. And so we have to continually choose, not because it's like mandatory or it's required of you or someone else is forcing you to do. No one's forcing us to do this. And so, the idea of it being their job, and then that there's a driving force within them, they're choosing this commitment all over again. And it isn't just a commitment to write, but it's a commitment to improve and create the next project and develop new ideas constantly. Commit a huge amount of time to networking and making connections and forming relationships. So it's that idea of, this daily discipline. Well, I'm looking at my notes, and that's another topic we'll get to, and it is kind of tied to this, Jennifer. But I think we have it's different for everybody. Do you have any solid tips on how to motivate yourself daily to build a solid writing routine? The first one, which is again probably going to sound overly simplified, but I know I have to do this for myself. I have to remind myself why I'm inspired about the particular project I'm writing. I really have to just fall into it. What are the emotional elements to this project? What are the themes, and how am I connecting to those things? Why does this lift me up and excite me? Not because of any type of outside industry influence, but it's because it's hitting something inside of me that I need to get out, that I need to work through, even from a personal or spiritual place, because we're all doing that. Any idea that pops up, and then how we execute that idea, is usually based on some other deeper need that we have within us to just try to work through. And if you're not feeling inspired about a particular idea or project, then either figure out a way to put yourself into this, some kind of current day problem you're having, or scrap the project and try to find something else that inspires you. A lot of the basic answers to your question, Jennifer, is that you have to try to, at least I do this for myself. I have to choose a particular time of day when I'm going to be writing. I do like to get comfortable in my own little space and office and stuff, but that can sometimes pigeonhole us, which I'll get into in a second. But it's the level of choice. And I know that, I don't know if that's all that helpful, but it's a choice of, I'm going to experience me today. As frou-frou as that sounds, I'm going to do something today. I'm going to write something today that makes me feel a certain way, that I think other people will be able to also feel. Not, I know that, these agents or these producers are looking for the next big horror movie, so I want to write that. It's almost a guarantee to lose steam, because for one, the trend is going to change, although horror is always popular. And you're not writing for yourself. You're not digging into something that you want to work through. So I hope that helps a little bit. Diane is saying, yeah, it might help to motivate you if you remind yourself that you're a real writer, not just a hobbyist. Yeah, that makes a difference. It's a commitment to that. This is something that I'm going to do for the rest of my life, whether I make money at it or not, because I enjoy it. I like it. It lights me up. It would be a disappointment, sure, if you don't ever get something made, or if whatever, you don't sell, whatever, of course, because that's all what we want. But I think too many writers focus on that type of end result as a way to show a level of success. What if you write something that you really think is so beautiful and a part of you and meaningful, and I'm sharing myself with the world, even if 7 people read this, the screenwriting world is a different monster, because the script is really just the first step. Here's the screenplay, and then you have to give it to, 100 other people to actually make the movie, and you aren't really usually a part of the actual production process. So it's kind of like, okay, well, have fun with what I just created. That's just the way it is. But with a book, it's, we have a finished product when you're done. When you're actually writing a novel, you get it edited, you create a cover, and you can just get it out there, and suddenly people are just consuming it. So it's a little different. Anyway, I'm going off a little bit of a tangent. I like what Ad Legacy is saying. A teacher years ago, this is kind of in a previous topic, but a teacher years ago once said, if you want to write about life, you have to live life. Yeah, and that goes back to the idea of how, writing alone guarantees failure. It's a little too broad of a statement, I think. But we have to get out there. We have to experience other people. We don't want to fall into our world is the only world. We have to break out and branch out. And I think one thing that art allows is it allows other people to see that, hey, these other people are feeling the way I'm feeling. And that's really powerful. That's what we're all trying to do. Even if you're just writing some, wacky comedy. I love wacky comedies, even Dumb and Dumber. Look how we all connect over that. Not that it was necessarily a really personal, emotional story, but you cared about those guys at the end. Okay, so in a little bit of a way, still somewhat on Jennifer's question here, but another topic for the event that was listed on the actual event page, the daily discipline myth that is keeping you stuck. It's a really simple idea, but it's the difference between the belief of I have to do this and I get to do this. If we can change that thought process, and Felicity Wren, who's the director of development with the ISA, said that to me many years ago, and it really clicked because, and I think it was as simple as, and like I think I was complaining about doing the dishes, cleaning we were roommates for a long time, and I was like, oh God, I have to wash the dishes, and she's like, what if you said you get to do the dishes? And of course, my own male ego was like, whatever, but she was right. I actually have a sink, running water. I have dishes that I've had food on that I was able to. It's a changing of perspective, and so that's a big part of your daily discipline. You get to do this, and like when this feels like like too much work, and we rely on other people to create our own success, you're gonna burn out. You just are. When you put the responsibility of your own success onto someone else, an agent, a manager, producer, whomever, you kind of fall a little into victim mode. We cannot allow that. Even if you're in a class, like this, which isn't necessarily a class, but I'm not the say all and end all. I don't know everything. It's great that you're here and you're listening to this. You're eager to learn and grow, and you're already 2 steps ahead of the people who didn't commit to sitting down and spending time here with us. But we have to focus on the idea that this is fun. No one is forcing us to do this, which does make it difficult to be disciplined. But I think too much of our upbringing and childhood, especially for those of you who were an athlete and you worked, in team sports, it's hard to get out there and do it yourself. It's really hard. I grew up as a jock, and I was in team sports all the time. I ended up running track as I got older, and I was going to do it in college. But that's an individual sport. Yeah, you're on a team, but it's just you running, and the only way to get better is for you to go run. So like you can't just get, oh God, I have basketball practice, I have to go. Okay, my team's relying on me, and it's a different mindset. And right now, as a writer, it's not easy to just sit down because no one's forcing us to do it. And I don't care how much money you think you've invested in your screenwriting and education or career, like there's no end game here. Like even if and when you get a movie made or a show set up, what's the next project? When people win an Academy Award, it's not like they're done. That actually creates a little bit more stress. Like I have to do it again. I have to reach that level of talent and craft again. And it goes all the way down to just, I got my first movie made or set up or whatever, or even better, when you get a manager, that's the beginning of your career. Getting a manager does not guarantee anything. Just because you have an agent who likes your screenplay and says, sure, I'll shop this around, it doesn't mean anything, at least in terms of a guarantee. It means you have more work to do. The idea of the 90 or the 10% fee that a manager or an agent would get, that means you've got the 90% of the work to do. Anyway, I'm going off on a little bit of a tangent there. So try to shift your perspective. I get to do this. This is fun. But in order to actually allow it to be fun, you have to go in here. You got to dig in and go, how am I connected to this project personally? What do I love so much about this, even if no one ever reads it? Because it just lights me up in some way. And if you're working on something that isn't lighting you up, ditch it. Start on something new. We can't be so stubborn all the time that this is the project. This is the one. This is the one that's going to make me all this money and help me find my success. And now it doesn't really work. It might be. The problem is we don't have any control of when a script's time arrives. We really don't, unless you've got tens of millions of dollars to be able to make the movie yourself. And if you do, please give me a call. I can put my cell phone in the chat. No, I'm kidding. We don't really have control over when something is actually going to arrive. Arrive meaning get made or produced. We have to rely on other people to be able to, provide that for us, which is just, it kind of sucks, but that's just the industry we're choosing to live in. So what are we going to do to light ourselves up and keep the inspiration going? And when you're done with a project, move to the next one. That's what successful screenwriters are doing. They have lists of ideas, possible projects that they could either write in and of itself, or they can combine with a different idea and maybe cross over a genre. We have to be constantly creating material. A manager probably will not rep you if you have less than 3 projects, and 3 may not even be enough. You probably want to go out with at least 5 finished projects that are well reviewed, rewritten multiple times, hopefully have some form of an accolade. There's a lot of work that we have to do, so I get it that it's exhausting. I've been doing this for so long and I haven't found any success yet. I understand that comment. At the same time, do you want to do this? Like, why are you doing it? Just so that you can sell a project? If that's the only reason, you might want to find a different career. I hate to say it that way because it doesn't really work. This is art that we're trying to create, that we're trying to affect other people's lives, much less fulfill our own. And there's a good chance we're not going to make money doing that. I hate saying it like that because I'm not trying to turn everybody off. It's just the truth. And so if we really do love this, then we'll commit. We just have to constantly find reasons why we love it. Let's see other comments and questions here. Tom, hello. Just joined, not sure what I missed, but do you have any advice for someone who's having a hard time committing to an idea? I was kind of talking about that a little bit. Just this idea of, and sorry, my screen is shaking so much. I don't know why it's doing that. Hopefully you guys can't see that. I'm not moving. I have a ghost here. Do you have any advice for someone who's having a hard time committing to an idea? Yeah, I kind of mentioned that a little bit. I think it's a lot of different levels. For one, on like a surface level, we really have to know and understand the industry. What type of movies or shows usually get made. What shows are on CBS, compared to ABC, compared to HBO Max, compared to Netflix, and really study all of that and really have a strong sense of, okay, that's the type of show that I could create. Look at the huge hook and the big marketing ploy, and obviously we don't have any control over the actors that are cast, but the types of stories that are being released. We have to be aware of that because your giant, space opera 3-part musical might not get made. Probably not going to work. You can still write it because maybe you love that and it's just totally so fun and you're loving the process. That's fine, great, because really we have to be doing this for ourselves first. But then, the more intricate answer, I guess, would be how much of this idea is really inspiring me. Can I really feel something about this? Not to just bring myself into this all over again, but with my first novel, I'd written it as a movie, like a screenplay. I think I had like 12 or 13 drafts. Most of them were almost like 95% rewrites, until I finally landed on here's the story. But it was coming from a place of, I just love this character so much. And what I realized after the fact, which I wish I would have realized as I was writing it, I was writing a character that I wished I could be. I wish I was that character, the main character, because she was so determined, and she never took no for an answer, and she had a goal, and she was going to do it, and she was going to achieve this, and she was a little, wild about it, a little, blindly ambitious, if you will. And a big part of me wished that I was that person. Like I was never that kid. If somebody said you're not going to be able to do that, it'd be like, oh, okay. That's just the kid that I was. And so it was a little bit of a process of therapy for me, trying to, fall into that persona. And so it's a real personal thing that we're doing here, and committing to an idea. There's one side of it of, is this even a piece of business? Is this something that actually could sell? Based on genre, how big the cast might be, the size of the general budget. Writers don't need to know the exact budget, but you have to have some semblance of an idea of what something might cost. And then the more, emotional things. Let's go into another little topic here. Why your perfect writing environment is sabotaging your progress. Yeah, I don't know. It's a simple one. But as I was thinking about it, I was like, we can't really pigeonhole our comfort. In other words, if you only feel comfortable writing by yourself in your office, at your desk, or you need a, very particular kind of candle lit while you write, there's nothing wrong with getting a process together and something that really sets you into a mode, but you are technically limiting yourself a little bit. And like the only things you actually need are your genius, creativity, and your brain, and maybe, a laptop or a journal or something. But you have to get comfortable with being able to create and write in any environment. And this goes especially for people who want to be staffed on a TV show, because you better be ready to be in a really boring conference room for hours on end with some people you don't like at all, and maybe a showrunner who is screaming at you and saying terrible things. You still have to figure out a way to be creative that way. Now, how do we simulate that as writers who are emerging and we aren't it's difficult to do that. I'm not going to come over to your house, and even if you hired me, and scream at you as you're writing. I'm not going to do that. But it's just this idea that we have to be open enough that maybe I change it up sometimes. For those of you who don't like working at coffee shops, I don't really like working at coffee shops. Give it a whirl. Just see if it changes something. Try not to get too comfortable, because the idea of any story is conflict. The more conflict, the better. I'm not saying you need to bring more conflict into your life, but experiences do allow you to have enough experience to then be able to deliver a story in an entertaining way. Sometimes just changing up your own writing arena can help with that. But let's go to another little question here. Jennifer is just following up, saying exactly, there are so many daily distractions, social media, suddenly you don't want to be writing anymore. You want that instant gratification from videos than the hard work of writing. I really don't think I could say it any better, Jennifer, especially the reference to instant gratification. We live in a world of instant gratification, and it's not helping us. I think I don't know. Personally, social media, it's bad. I don't know how else to say it. I look at it all the time. I have a bunch of followers on Instagram, and I post, so maybe I'm being a little bit of a hypocrite, but I like seeing some funny, goofy cat videos every now and then. And I like sharing memes with friends. It's fun, but it's social media is driven in terms of like the literal algorithm to make us angry, because anger makes us want more anger. It keeps us in this state of being frustrated and mad, and I'm not saying every single post on social media is only about making us angry, but that's technically what is driving most, if not all, of the algorithms. These social media sites are driving us to see more stuff that will make us engage with it. Why do you see so many trolls? People just think they can say whatever anyway, this isn't necessarily about social media. But a good idea is to make sure and be disciplined about, okay, I am only going to look at my social media at this time of the day or something. Don't just reach for your phone and pick up and start scrolling at any time. Like we have to make a conscious effort to just kind of let go, you know. Deanne, though, is asking a good question. Do we have to be on social media in order to connect? Technically, no. Doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt at all. But no, I don't think you absolutely have to be on social media. One reason why I do like it is because of the ability to connect with others. That's really, you know, one of the core basic ideas behind social media, to be more social. We just have to be protective of our energies, you know, and maybe that sounds a little frou-frou. I'll say that term again, but we have to be protective of ourselves because there's so much shit out there that is put in front of us in order to make us angry. And we're not going to change it just by commenting on a social media post, you know? But yeah, no, Deanne, you don't have to be, but that may mean that you have to be more social in other ways. You're going to have to go to film festivals and, you know, join writing groups, and we do need to establish relationships there. That's necessary. Because that was part of the topic. One of the topics I was talking about is that we can't write in a vacuum. We can't write by ourselves. Now she's saying no. That we do need to be out there, you know, and I get it. A lot of writers are introverts. It's a skill that you can, you know, being an extrovert, it's a skill that you can grow. You just have to be a little bit more comfortable. And the more often you do it, the better at it you become. When I first started teaching live classes, I was very nervous, because the basic foundational feeling was they're going to find out I have no idea what I'm doing. But the more you do something, the closer you become to having the confidence of, I know what I'm doing. It's just like anything else. You know? Let's see. Muggs is saying, I try to keep pencil and paper or even a stray napkin wherever I am. Some of the easiest writing happens when least expected. Yeah, I love that. Virginia, I always recommend participating in a 48-hour film as a writer. The pressure to write and create a film over a weekend is a great learning experience. Yeah, there are a few different programs. I know there's like New York Midnight Madness or something. I think they're still going, and it's like a short film. But then there's the literal, you know, like 48-hour write a movie in 2 days type of thing. And some of them are even like make a movie in 2 days. There are a lot of programs out there that can help you stay disciplined, but it's also such a great educational experience. I'm in the process of developing and launching a short film class and retreat, which would be a 3-month plus process of learning production from, you know, the writer's perspective. And I'm bringing in instructors and telling them how to, you know, frame a shot and how to look at a script and go, okay, here are the visuals that could come out of it, how to schedule a shoot, and then spend 7 days on a retreat where you'll actually shoot the short film. Still working on trying to, you know, get that launched, but it'll happen next year. I'm just not exactly sure when. So yeah, I mean, finding ways to not only invest in yourself, which we just have to. Every actor who moves to LA or New York knows that they have to hire an acting coach and they have to take some kind of showcase and, you know, et cetera, et cetera. They do it their whole career. Like, that's one way to meet other actors and get themselves in front of casting agents, but they're growing their craft. They're learning. They're constantly trying to improve. And I think if there's any piece of advice that I would give any writer, is that we can't just, you know, put 2 scripts in a basket and expect that is enough. It just isn't. And I don't mean that in such a negative way. It's just we grow with every screenplay we write. The stronger of a writer we become, the closer we become to discovering our real voice and how we feel about things and our world perspective. And then the types of stories that we want to tell change. And, you know, Steven Spielberg didn't just make Jaws and go, that's it. You know, he was constantly trying to make more, and look what happened, you know. Diane, would love your thoughts on my question regarding approaching an agent to rep a specific script, and rather than I'm looking for an agent, pitch. So it's a touchy situation with the agent question. You know, the idea of how do I get an agent, or how do I have it, you know, get an agent to be interested in my script. The basic answer is cold query does work. Not very often, but it does work. I think your approach needs to be very informal at first. It's not the publishing industry. The publishing industry is extremely formal with their query letters. There's like an expected structure. They're more open to accepting cold queries, but there's an expectation of how that email is going to be structured. In the film industry, it's much more informal. You want to be thinking about, or at least putting yourself in the chair of the agent, in this very particular situation, meaning they don't know who you are at all. You've had no contact with them before. You've never, maybe, I don't know, but you've never had a movie made before. You don't have a lot of accolades behind you. It isn't being referred to them, and all of these things already. It isn't like, oh, but you have to put yourself in their shoes. They have a lot of other business that they need to take care of. They don't get paid unless their clients make money. And so they have to be focusing on their livelihood. My clients need me, and I'm trying to, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the best way I would suggest is to slowly try to just form a relationship a little bit. You can email them and say, I know I'm just coming out of the blue. I'm just looking to form relationships. I'm not asking you to do anything. I'm not going to send you my screenplay, but I'm just curious, are you looking to take on new projects or writers? I would love any kind of feedback like that, first email. If they ignore it, they ignore it. Some people may respond. There was an agent, this was many years ago, who was with Paradigm. He was the lead agent there, and he was on a panel. And at the time, email was around, but he said that I will always answer the phone if a writer calls me, because who knows, that could be an opportunity for me. However, I'm going to give you 10 seconds for me to then be able to figure out, are you crazy or not? If I think you're crazy, I'm just going to say, no, thanks. And he's going to hang up. If I think, okay, this person seems somewhat professional and normal, I'll give you another 30, 60 seconds to see, what is the opportunity here. And so most people are looking for opportunities. The agents want to say yes to things. But what we don't want to do is email this huge log line and synopsis, and here's my script attached, and then here's a pitch deck for all these other projects I have. And they're not going to read it. In a lot of ways, they won't even want to open the email because they might think it's spam. And then if I open up this attachment, my computer's going to explode or something. So you want to just put yourself in the shoes of the agent and don't be too nervous. Like, who cares if they say no? So you move on to the next agent, you really have nothing to lose. But you just want to be professional and understand where they are. Let's see. She's also saying, identified an agent who has a track record selling scripts similar to one I am hoping to sell. Is weird to approach this agent with a specific ask to rep my script. Don't ask them to rep your screenplay or you, not right away. Just try to form a relationship. I'm an emerging writer. I'm trying to grow my circle of industry professionals. Maybe ask them a question. Don't ask them to do that much for you in that first email. If you ask them, would you be willing to read or rep my script? They don't even know who you are. They haven't even read the script yet. And so it's hard for them to say yes or even no, so you want to just lightly be a human being, be kind. Don't be too cheeky. You don't need to try to send jokes or something. If you do know that this agent, represented a project that they sold, and so you could compliment them. Scott's talking about Normal Legend. That's who I was referencing. Yeah. Let's see here. Muggs is excited about the short film workshop. That's cool. Okay, last little bit. I just, in general, everybody, because we're kind of coming down to the end, with this little event that I wanted to put on, I just wanted to be open and upfront and honest with you. And with the 30-day challenge, I'm going to be doing this for 30 straight days. I'm going to be on Zoom, and I'm going to be touching on the topics that you're supposed to be, working on, the assignments that you're going to be doing through the coursework, a little bit, but just opening up to questions and just kind of, giving my advice as much as I'm able. But it also allows everybody to have a place to be. Like right now, you're seeing names in the comment sections. You're probably, or you might remember some of those people, and maybe you connect with them on social media or offsite or something. It's a community, even just this one-time event. But I just wanted to be upfront and honest with you about a lot of things, because all of what I've covered it's really just the beginning. What you're choosing to do is something that very few people find success doing. And that's just a fact. That isn't, again, I've said it a few times in this event. It's not me being pessimistic or negative, or I'm not believing in any of you. This industry has always been difficult, always, and it always will be. But I don't know if you necessarily realize how much more access you currently have compared to when I was coming up myself. Like we didn't even have internet. Well, that was just starting to become something interesting, when I was first starting with like 99, 2000. So much less social media. It's, it was a phone call or a literal knock on the door or chasing someone down in the middle of a crowded bar, just trying to get 2 minutes of their time. It was horrifying, especially for someone like all of you who is relatively introverted. But then even beyond that, we didn't have dozens and dozens of outlets to host and share our material. Like we didn't have ways to connect like we're connecting now. Even just literally this right now. So I'm just looking at my notes again, sorry. But, it was very much back then the truth that if you didn't live in Los Angeles or New York, good luck. Like it's not going to happen. You had to move to LA or New York. Now, the people all over the world are finding ways to get their material out there. What we want to try to do is open up our possibilities a little bit. Don't just pigeonhole yourself as only a screenwriter. You're a writer. You're a creator. And the creative, or what do they call it? The creator economy these days is massive. We want to remind ourselves that the reason we're doing what we're doing is because we just want to tell some stories. We just want people, and we want to entertain people. You don't have to only do that through a screenplay. You can create shorts. You can put them on YouTube. You can create a blog. You can create a video blog on YouTube. You don't have to be on social media if you don't want to, but there are ways to get yourself out there. I've had a lot of authors tell me that, when they're querying publishers, one of the primary questions that the publisher asks is, how many followers do you have on Instagram? It's total cringe, as the younger, generation tends to say. But the publisher is looking for a way to help slightly guarantee more success. And so if you can create, I don't want to say a following like you're some cult leader, but you want to get yourself out there. Like there are so many more ways to do that. And so just looking at my notes again, even in today's, industry, of course, you're going to benefit from being in Los Angeles or New York or something, but it's not necessary. You have so many more opportunities at your fingertips. So just use them. Take advantage of every single way possible to showcase your talent. Just like what I was talking about. There are so many different places that are amazing, like Gotham Writers, my Story Farm classes, and I have a community. The ISA, obviously. Script Anatomy is amazing, especially if you want to be a TV writer. There's so many organizations out there that are so helpful, and it helps you meet other people. It makes you feel like you're not doing this alone. And so, just to reiterate something that I said earlier about successful writers, you have to be 100% committed to this in every possible way. You just do. Because I don't know if using a sports analogy is necessarily the perfect for this, but there's no like minor leagues. There's no like college system to try to work your way up and maybe become a professional football player. It's either we are here where we are now, or you're a paid writer. Like there's no in between there. Yeah, you could argue that there are levels of success, and you want to be the next Charlie Kaufman or Steven Spielberg or Scorsese. Okay, that's fine, but you're either committed to it or you're not. And in a way, that's actually kind of nice because yes, there are gatekeepers that some of us might believe they're kind of holding the door closed and they don't want my material. Yes, they do. They really, really want your material, but it has to be amazing. And they have to know that it's coming from a writer who is absolutely committed, that they've put in the time, they've educated themselves, you've written more than 2 screenplays, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we have to be committed, not just, sitting down to write every day, but to networking, creating relationships, producing new material, submitting to contests and festivals, going to festivals. There's so much fun, everybody. And I guarantee you, at least in the States, there's like a festival in every state. So just go and enjoy it. Watch what other people are creating. Make friends with somebody. Get drunk with some stranger. Like just it. You cultivate a community that way. So we all do have priorities in our life, of course. And of course, sometimes something happens where it's like, whoa, yeah, I have to not write right now. I have to go do that. But it doesn't necessarily mean that we have to make the other priorities that much more important than our writing if you're really going to be dedicated to this. So we'll just, we'll keep going. We'll keep going with this. I'm just looking at any comments or notes. Let's see here. What questions? Any other questions, everybody? ISA is saying you do have a few. Okay, let me look at the article. Bill, okay, here we go. Yeah. The industry maintains 110 to 120 pages. In format, do they take in what format do they take into consideration? Show, don't tell. What's wrong coming in at 100 pages? Okay, so please don't write a script that's 120 pages long. I don't care what your argument is. I don't care how big you think your script is. I don't care if you're thinking that a minute of screen time is 1 page. It doesn't really work that way anymore. 110 maximum. Yeah, if you have 113, 114, it's not that big of a deal. But the first thing a reader looks at when they open a screenplay, how many pages do I have to read? If it's 115, it's not like, okay, maybe this is a relatively early draft. It's going to be kind of a big script. Maybe there's a ton of dialogue. They're already judging. If it's over 120, they won't want to read it. I've had many of those experiences myself, but it tells me that they haven't really done as much work in the rewriting stage as possible. They haven't been paying attention to events like this. The industry standard is about 110 pages. Bill is asking what's wrong with coming in at 100. Absolutely nothing. That would be wonderful. But let's try not to focus too much on, oh, my page count has to be this. It's a guardrail a little bit. If I see a script that's over 120 pages, and I've read some that are 140, 130, 150, it means that it hasn't been developed, that this needs a lot of work, and that the writer is still, developing themselves. In my role, where I'm a little bit more of an educator than I am like a producer, even though I have and I pitch projects around town, I'm not going to, not read it. I'm being paid to give you notes. And so of course I will. But from an industry standpoint, the idea of show, don't tell. Yeah, of course, generally speaking, but it's also totally relative to the project. We also, at kind of on the other side of the idea, is that we don't want chunks of scene direction paragraphs. That just then becomes a novel. I think the easiest thing, and it's totally free, everyone, the easiest way to teach yourself is to read screenplays. And the reason I'm saying it with that kind of inflection is because it amazes me how few screenwriters who intend to be professional screenwriters read screenplays. How are you not reading screenplays? I don't mean to ask such a, snarky rhetorical question. It's free. The ISA has a screenplay library. You can download as many as you want. Read them. Like that. You literally have to pay nothing other than your time, but you're going to learn so much. Sometimes you'll read a script that you're like, oh, that's not very good. Why didn't you like it? Maybe it's not your voice. Maybe it's not your genre. Maybe they did some things in the scene direction that you don't really. Okay, great. You just learned something. And most of those screenplays are not the production, shooting scripts that we specifically are trying to cultivate in the ISA screenplay library. The actual written, drafts of the screenplay, not the shooting draft. So it's a good question, Bill. Don't write a 120-page screenplay. 110 is very comfortable. 100 pages is great. I wouldn't, if you're under 90 pages, then it's probably going to have to be for a reason, like it's a quiet place, there's no dialogue, or, there's like a gimmick to it. Let's see here. From a writer from Cameroon. The logistics in Cameroon do not align with my cinematic vision, so my scripts are more UK and Hollywood friendly rather than Cameroon friendly. Is that a good choice? I think it's a great choice, because you being literally living in Cameroon have a completely different perspective on the world. you have something to share. And the Hollywood industry is looking for something like that. Granted, you need a really great idea, a nice strong hook of some kind. You want to have it be somewhat mainstream. We don't want to necessarily make an experimental film and then expect to sell that to Hollywood. But you have a voice and a perspective that is not so-called normal. I don't mean that in a bad way, in the UK or the Hollywood industry. So I think it's a great choice. The best thing you can do is study as many American or British made movies and shows as you can so that you understand their sensibilities and does it match with your own, because you don't want to just copy everybody else. You want to come from a place of, your own personal strength and voice, etc. So no, it's a good question. Ad legacy. I tend to write a script based on stories told by friends, docs, anywhere, stories that can be researched. So I tend to spend 4, 5, 6 months something before writing. Is that too much time on research a bad thing? I don't think so. I mean, I think it completely depends on the topic. If you are being historically accurate and you're writing about a very specific event that happened in history and you want to be as can't think of the word, particular to the time period, understanding the dialect and really get a strong sense of who these characters are because you're trying to write to real people. Yeah, I think so. But there is a point where, thanks, Bill, he has to go. There is a point where sometimes in our brain, we can trick ourselves into thinking that we're writing when really we're just researching. So you just want to be aware, there is a time you're going to have to write the script and 4, 5, 6 months, 6 months, it's a pretty long time. But again, it's completely dependent on what you're writing. As you're going through that research, you're probably making notes and trying to, craft character. And so that's a lot of upfront development work. It's fine. Do what you can to speed it up as best you can. Because, backstory on characters and the actual true events of things, it isn't technically enough to actually deliver the story. You have to then consider, well, what's the movie version of this, and that's a big question. Okay, Jennifer saying, what is the preferable page count for a comedy pilot script? The basic answer to that, if you're writing something that is like a traditional sitcom, like Ghosts, what are the other sitcoms that are on right now? There's a lot of things. Something on ABC, CBS. It's a traditional sitcom. You're going to be under 30 pages. Yeah, 30 pages maximum. If you're writing something that's going to be on a streamer, that's a little bit that doesn't have to account for commercials and a little more, PG-13 R-rated or something, you could get away with 37 pages, maybe 38. I've seen some in the 40 level, but that's from writers that are well produced and and they're staffed. And I would try to keep it below 37. TV is much more formatted for hour-long TV. If you're writing something for cable or a streamer where there's no commercials, HBO or something, you're maximum 66, maybe 67. 63, 64 is a nice comfortable number. If you're writing an hour-long procedural or traditional hour-long show on a CBS or something, you're going to be probably almost specifically at about 56, 57 pages. You might be able to get away with 59, but I wouldn't worry too much about it. It's just more, again, it's a guardrail. If you're trying to write a traditional comedy like sitcom and you're at 50 pages, I mean, you're almost twice as, it's just too much. Don't think about it too much in your first draft. You're just trying to get the voice and situations down. Let's see here. Can a historical World War II script be longer? No. Sorry, Bev. I don't mean to be so harsh with that answer. It'll be a little more epic in terms of the feel to it, but because please don't take this the wrong way, Bev, I'm assuming you're an emerging writer and you haven't yet had something sold or set up, and you don't have a track record around town. It's just kind of an expectation. If you hit 117, 118, okay, but you want to keep it under 120. You really, really do. Let's see. ISA is posting from Instagram. I'm an ISA finalist. Good for you in Thriller. And I want to ask, do you think producers and managers prefer a pitch to start or the script? It's a good question. If it's TV, whether it's hour long or half hour, it's almost always the pitch first. But at the same time, if you don't have an agent or manager giving you, setting you up for that meeting, then sometimes it's the script first. Usually it's the pitch first. Like they're looking at the pitch deck, they're thinking about the series as a whole, and the pilot is of course important. But like as an example, I was pitching my YA fantasy book as a TV series for almost a year. I pitched 20 plus companies. Sony got really close, and I thought they were going to say yes, but they didn't. I didn't even have a pilot written. It was just a pitch because it was a very big world, but that's because it was animated. It's an animated young adult show that really the idea is what's being presented, and it's not as important to have the pilot done. When it comes to movies, almost always script first. It helps to have like a lookbook or like a semi pitch deck, but it's the script. They'll look at the log line. The log line is extremely important, so you could argue that's a pitch. They're going to look at the log line first and determine whether or not this is even a genre that they want on their slate, or this is something that they think they could sell. Then they'll read the screenplay, but it's the script for in the feature space. Eva, how long is too long to be outlining and brainstorming? Yeah, kind of like brainstorming a regular TV script. How long is too long to be outlining? I don't know if I want to give like a specific parameter to that, Eva, because every project's different. There are some projects that just click and you're like, oh man, I get it. And bam, it's done in a week. It just makes more sense to you. There are some projects that are just animals that take a really long time and you just aren't connecting with it and you're just not grasping it. So I don't know if I want to give too much of a specific answer to that, because it really is dependent on the type of writer you are, how much time you have. Some people only have 10 to 15 hours of writing because they have a day job and they have, 27 children or whatever it might be. And so it kind of depends. If you're like going on 2 or 3 years or something, outlining a series, then you may be doing more work than you need. You only need to write the pilot. You don't need to write other episodes to a TV series. Don't do it. It's a waste of time. Other than practice for yourself and trying to get a sense of what might happen in future episodes. But nobody's going to read those future episodes. They're going to look at the pilot. They're going to look at your pitch deck. So, I guess what I'll say is the sooner you can get to the actual page writing process, great. But like what I was saying at the beginning of this little event that we're hosting here, you do need to do a lot of pre-work. You have to do the conceptual work, the character development. You have to structure it out. So it's good that you're asking that question, but I think it's kind of up to you. You're going to know, like, okay, I just need to write this thing. I can't be too much of a perfectionist. Another one from Instagram: does a great concept sell more than an actual script? Quick answer to that is usually yes. That is, a producer reads a script with a mind-blowing concept, but the screenwriting is somewhat amateurish. Does the script still sell? It definitely can. I've seen this happen. The execution of a script is very important, but it also kind of depends on who's looking at it, what kind of company is considering it. But if you really do have an amazing idea, the idea will probably sell before the execution of the screenplay. It also kind of depends on the type of movie it is. If you're writing something that's really deep and artsy, I'm trying to remember. And the Academy Award winning movie from, I think, 2 years ago is a female director in the Old West. If anybody watching this can name that movie, it won Best Picture. Can't remember the name of the movie, which shows how much I enjoyed it. But really moving, very emotional, visually, incredible. And the directing really was amazing. I don't know I can't remember if she won Best Director or not. It wasn't Nomadland, but that's a good guess. It was with Jesse, I can't remember his name now, Jesse Pullman or Pluckman. Anyway, point being, what was I saying? Oh, so it's something that's very Power of the Dog. Thank you, Brett. Hair of the Dog, Vladimir. Close. Power of the Dog. Very artistic movie. That's going to have to be executed in a way that's amazing, because the idea itself, not exactly mainstream. Jane Campion, thank you, Brett. But if you have something really high concept, even like The Purge or The Hangover, the script was probably going to be rewritten by other people anyway. But that isn't to say Jesse Plemons, thank you, Tom. I can never remember his last name. It doesn't mean you have to just kind of be lazy with the writing of the movie. It still needs to be engaging, because if it's a great idea, they're definitely going to read the screenplay. But if it's executed in a really terrible way, it's just going to kind of pull the excitement about the idea down a little bit. And it's going to make them think, Jesus, we have so much work to do on the script. So it's only like a few percentage points more in terms of the level of importance. A concept has been purchased before without a script because it's so great. Usually, though, the writer and or producer pitching it has done it before. They've proven that they can write a screenplay before. So the execution of the script is still extremely important. Educating yourself, practicing, writing a ton of screenplays. Don't just rely on, I have this amazing idea. It's great that you do. I hope everybody does. But we want the execution of the script to still be incredible. Matthew is saying, I'm always looking for a high concept idea. Yeah. So am I. We all are. And I'm not trying to, lessen the impact of your comment, Matthew, at all. But the industry wants those high concept ideas. They're not always easy to find, and they're few and far between. But that's why when you see some come out, that's why everybody's like, oh my God, I have to watch that movie. That's such a great idea. When The Purge came out, I was like almost angry with myself. Like, that is such an amazing idea. And look what happened, whether you like horror or not. I think you can agree it's a pretty good idea. All right, everybody. I went about 15 minutes longer than I expected, but that's okay. If you want to, join me with the 30-day challenge. I'm going to be doing this every day. Probably not for an hour and 20 minutes, every day, but I'm available through that course if you want. You can find me at thestoryfarm.org. You can email me, max@thestoryfarm.org. I have a free community that you could join there. It's almost like our own private little Facebook page, but it's not through Facebook. It's through circle.so. And you can sign up and just, participate in the membership forum, et cetera, et cetera. But good. Thank you, Ad Legacy, saying great webinar. More of these to come in the future, everybody. Just stay tuned. You can follow me on Instagram, Instamax9. Hopefully we can all work together and create something amazing, but deep down, do it for ourselves first. Don't try to do this as like, I have to create a product and, put it on the shelf so that somebody can find it. Let's do something that's meaningful here, All right, everybody. Have a fabulous week, and I will see you soon, I'm sure. Have a good one. The two main things that I've noticed most screenwriters struggle with, deadlines and accountability, to just finish something. Do you really want your brilliant idea to stay half finished? That unfinished script is an opportunity that slips further and further away with each passing day that you don't write something. The 30-day screenwriting challenge that I created changes that. In just 1 month, you're going to have a fully developed script, a draft ready to submit to fellowships, contests, open writing gigs with the ISA, to the 5,000 plus industry pros that are going to be on the ISA's marketplace. We're talking about Netflix, HBO Max, Warner Brothers, Lionsgate, Lifetime, Lucky Chap, Apple, so many to be able to submit to. These are companies that are actually looking for material right now. And even if you don't finish a full script in 30 days, look at what you're going to accomplish. A new habit, a new routine, God forbid an education, because I'm going to walk you through 30 days of coursework that's going to teach you exercises and tools that you're going to be able to use for the entirety of your career. So this isn't just about writing fast, it's about building your talents and your craft. Part of the game changer here is that I'm going to host live office hours every single day, 30 straight days. I'm doing it again. 30 straight days, I'm going to be dedicating my time to you, just like you're going to be dedicating your time to your writing. You're not left on your own here. This isn't just some little accountability, self-guided course where we really hope you do it. I'm going to be there with you every single day for 30 straight days. You'll have direct access to me to get feedback, to ask questions about the coursework. I'm going to every day walk through what's happening in the course that particular day. It's going to be live on office hours. The recordings will be available. Yes, this is accountability, but this is also about me teaching you, educating you, helping you along, giving you a place to be for 30 straight days. You're going to be changed after this. You're going to feel a new routine. After the 30 days are done, you're going to miss those live office hours. Let's just consider the real world ramifications here. Like the writers on shows like The Bear or Ghosts or Hacks or any major show right now. Those writers didn't get there just by waiting around, hoping that someone's going to discover them. They were out there. They were not only submitting their projects, but they were working on their craft, reading a ton of screenplays, writing every single day. They didn't let their projects go unfinished for months. This is a job to them. And that's part of what I'm trying to do here. Those writers did everything possible to make themselves ready when that time comes. This 30-day challenge gets you into that routine. If you want to see your movie on the big screen in the middle of July, you need every tool in your toolbox. And imagine if you can walk away a month from now with a finished script, but also a fresh and creative approach to your writing sessions, knowing what you're going to do every day, having a set exercise every single day that's going to slowly develop that project over time. It's just going to be creating that much more of a thoroughly developed project and script, and that's what I'm aiming for here. No other 30-day challenge that has an instructor sitting down with you literally every day for each 30 days live, walking you through these exercises, answering your questions, giving you light feedback, and helping form a live community for 30 straight days. We want to finish something, feel satisfied with it, and I'm going to help you get there with this 30-day challenge. So, are you ready?